Happy Monday morning to you. We are in the Gospel of Matthew. We are in chapter 22, and we will be starting today in verse 15. Then the Pharisees went and plotted how they might entangle him in his talk. And they sent to him their disciples with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God in truth, nor do you care about anyone, for you do not regard the person of men. Tell us, therefore, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus perceived their wickedness and said, Why do you test me, you hypocrites? Show me the tax money. So they brought him a denarius and said to him, Whose image and inscription is this? They said to him, Caesar's. And he said to them, Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. When they heard these words, they marveled and left him and went their way. So, a few things here. We are going to see here, and honestly, finishing up this chapter is all people trying to trap Jesus. It's totally an off-topic side teaching, but the Passover lamb was selected on the 10th of Nisan, and the 14th of Nisan is Passover. Nisan is the month in the Hebrew calendar, and the 10th of Nisan would have been Palm Sunday when Jesus rode in on the donkey. It's during that period of time where we're told in the Old Testament that the Passover lamb that was selected would be examined before being offered up as a sacrifice. It was over a period of days that they had it around and they could keep an eye on it and make sure that it was a worthy lamb. And so it's fun to watch as Jesus is examined here the week leading up to the Passover. And so I'll jump back to something in verse 16 that kind of popped out at me as we were going through there. But you'll notice that he does respond to their question with a question. We've talked about this before. Now, Jesus actually gives them an answer after his question, but they ask a question and he asks a question. And he kind of puts it back into their court a bit. Show me the money, and whose image is this? And, well, it's Caesar's. Well, okay, well, if this belongs to Caesar, then give Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. And so part of what this was they knew that they were putting him into a trap. If he says, pay taxes, the people would not be happy because the people didn't like the taxation, and some of it was even unlawful taxation, that they were being worked over by the tax collectors who were able to keep what they overtaxed. But if he says, don't pay taxes, well, they brought Herodians there. They brought people who were loyal to the king, who was also loyal to Rome. And the idea is that they would then hear that Jesus is saying, don't pay your taxes. And this would have gotten them in trouble with the Romans. So there's this rock and a hard place situation. But Jesus gives an answer, and yet he shifts gears in the way of thinking. If that's Caesar's, then let it be Caesar's. And you give God what belongs to God. And so it was an interesting answer, and they marveled at it. It's like, well, that's, a way of putting it, that, he's trying to get people's minds off of the temporal and onto the spiritual and the eternal. That stuff is of this world. It's just money. I think it'd be really great if more Christians had that mentality of, it's just money. What's the big deal? Now, when we're struggling for money, that can be tough. But a lot of people aren't struggling for money. They're struggling for all the extra stuff that they want in life. And at the end of the day, I think that most of us are going to go through life, and then we're going to get to heaven and we're going to realize I was chasing after the wrong things. I was setting my mind and my focus on the wrong things. And we're going to live a comfortable and secure. No, you're not pursuing riches, but just to be secure and comfortable, and then realize in heaven that, well, I didn't need to be so secure and comfortable. Now, there's tons about biblical finances, about how it is wise to count the cost, to have a budget, to have savings. Those aren't bad things at all. But again, it all gets back to being a heart issue of where our heart is at. Back it up to verse 16, though. Something in there that really jumped out is where they tell him that we know you teach the way of God and truth, nor do you care about anyone. And we have to understand what that means, because it says for, so it's explaining, you don't care about anyone, for you do not regard the person of men. In short, not that he didn't care about people, he didn't care what people thought. Jesus didn't care what other people thought. He cared about the truth. He cared about the mission of God. He cared about the kingdom. He cared about edifying his disciples. And so that's another thing that is, it's important for us in the church to really wrap our minds around is, are we worried about what other people will think? Many of us are timid when it comes to sharing the gospel, going out and telling people about Jesus. And the reason is because we care a little too much about what people think. Some people say, I get afraid. And you have to ask yourself, honestly, what are you afraid of? Are you sincerely afraid that someone's going to shoot you? In America, that's very unlikely. Other places, go somewhere into a Muslim-controlled nation and share the gospel, you might fear jail or actual, physical harm. But are you afraid that someone's going to hurt you? That's not logical, right? I don't think that's the fear. What's the fear? Well, the only fear that makes sense is what other people are going to think about you. Because we care maybe a little too much about what other people think. Jesus didn't care about anyone, that kind of care, because he did not regard the person of men. He wasn't looking for man's approval. He was looking for God's approval. And think of it this way, not trying to lay a heavy, but I think it's a logical conclusion that whenever we have an opportunity to share the gospel, God is watching. You know that. I know that. We all know that. And so either this person, what is it again? They regard the person of men to care. This person might think weird of me if I share Jesus with them and they just think it's weird or dumb, or they hate God. I don't know, right? But God's watching too. And he has an opinion of you and how you're doing and what he desires you to do. And Jesus had only one mindset. What does he think about what I'm doing? Jesus cared about the Father. What does God want me to do? How would God feel if I missed out on this opportunity? And so Jesus was fully concerned with the will of the Father, not the will of man, the care of the people. He wasn't doing this to be popular. He would get crucified in days from this event because of what he was doing. He didn't care if he upset people. Now, I will throw this out too, because this is important for balance. Jesus upset people by lovingly telling them the truth of God. Many people upset people because they're jerks, they lack tact, or they're just misguided in how they go about their business. So, this isn't promoting that we just don't care about people's feelings. It has nothing to do with us not caring about how people respond for their sake. Really, it has to do with us. This is only an us thing. Am I doing this for their praise? Am I avoiding this because they might not like me? Or am I doing it because of what God thinks? So this is not like I don't care how they respond. I don't care if they don't like what I say. It's what's my motive? This is self-centered direction, not having to be like, well, if they don't like it when I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying there's a lot of ways you can just make people mad trying to share the gospel. And that's not effective. Therefore, it's not edifying, not helpful. So the point is, am I not doing it because of my own fear of how they would respond? And am I fearing, in a good and healthy fear, of how God feels about what I'm doing? So they knew this. Jesus had a rep. I mean, we know that you teach and you don't care. Like if people, praise you because of your teaching, you just come to teach. And what does they say? The way of God. That's all. And so you should go and teach. Go explain it to someone. That's the simple, just disciple-making teaching, right? Not necessarily writing a book or preparing a sermon, but just explaining to people what the Bible says. Tell people about the way of God. And don't worry about how they're going to respond. Worry about if you are pleasing God with your life and with your actions and your obedience. So, all righty. There we go for today, folks. You guys have a blessed day, and I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. See you then.